Audio Jungle.
And just imagine how it happens live, you know, when we're face to face and two of our candidates show up. So thank you very much for showing up. How this is going to go tonight, even though the others aren't here, I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to talk about your platform, what it is that you're running on. And then after that, I'll still ask you questions just in case there's people on here that want to hear from you. Okay, so I will, is there anything that you need to ask me before we get started? Even if you have to set a timer, or I'll say hold up 2 minutes, two fingers for 2 minutes left, or for 1 minute, for 1 minute left, whatever, shut it down. This will we stay Are there any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
Is Miss Murtha, is it the two of us? That's it? Answering questions back and forth, or?
Themes right now, that's all that's here right now. So that's what we'll do for right now. Is that okay? I just don't want you to feel like time coming on, but there may be someone here that still want to hear from you. Maybe some constituents that still want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Ms. Arthur, do you have any questions?
No, except I wish I knew I had to have a platform.
You know, I'm an incumbent, so you can talk about what you've already done.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go with you since your face is right here on my screen, and so you can start in yourself. If there's any background from anyone else, if there's anyone else listening, if you could just mute your microphone so that there's no background noise while the other is speaking. I will keep mine unmuted for the duration of the time. But if you're not speaking, just mute your phone, your iPad or laptop, please. This is Miss Ann Murtha, District 4, the school board incumbent. Yes.
Okay. Well, hello to everyone. And even though I'm not really a political animal, I am very excited to be on the school board because I am passionate about education, and that's what I do every day. I'm a teacher at Fort Campbell, and so I think that my knowledge base in education gives me a leg up and a strong foundation to really add value to what goes on with the school board and the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system. I've been very active in the school system, you know, since my children were involved. And of course, you know, the community over here, they kind of put me in. I didn't really know what I was getting into when they said, hey, go down here and take this paper. But anyway, I've enjoyed it. And I think I've added value since I've been on there. So I know even before I got on the school board, I was, you know, involved in giving New Providence and Northwest a facelift when the schools were really not taken care of on the outside. And so I've been, you know, very active. Platform-wise, I guess, you know, what the thing about the school board is we have one employee, and that is the superintendent. And I'm excited about Mr. House. I was thrilled to be able to nominate him when he came here and interviewed. He's excellent, and it's my job to support him. Certainly as school board members, we ask questions. You know, we check to see that they are following the protocol, but as far as our job, you know, we are the liaison between the system, Mr. House, and the community. But our support of his efforts and ensuring that he's doing the job that we've hired him for is truly our job. And I'm not sure what else to say.
Okay. Okay. Before we go to Mr. England, are there any other candidates that joined the call since we began?
Mr.
No?
John Dawson.
Pardon me?
Mr. John Dawson.
Mr. Dawson?
I did, but I'm not in part of this tonight.
Yes, that's okay. This is a public forum, so you're absolutely welcome. So Mr. England, Doug England, he's District 22, for our Senate.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if you can hear me loud and clear, I just spent 33 years in the Army. I just retired 4 months ago, and I was born in Austin, Texas. My dad was in between 2 tours in Vietnam. Lived all over the place across the nation. Ended up graduating high school in Colorado, and then joined the military right after that. Ended up getting my degree through Embry-Riddle and went to flight school right after Desert Storm. And I have been in every conflict you can think of except for Mogadishu. And so I've had a very, very busy career. There was the highlights of my career. I was the chief pilot for the 160th for several years. And I was the senior warrant officer advisor to the Secretary of the Army for the last 2 years. So I've seen a very executive level of the military and in the Pentagon, and really looking at the policies that, from personnel management to readiness, everything across the entire Army. So I've had some great experience to propel me into what I'm getting into now. I ran into several friends that are in positions. Our Congressman from area, Mark Green, inspired me to run because this is his old position. And the opponent that I'm up against, he and I are I would say complete opposites, because I do have a sense of loyalty and a sense of honor, and I know what it means. I'm a grassroots type person. I am nowhere near wealthy, but I do know a hard-earned dollar is a hard-to-keep dollar. So I like to keep money in my pocket. And so I think I may be even perceived as a threat in our state Senate, because I'm not going to be easily coerced. So I have been challenged throughout my career many, many years on so many aspects, and I'm ready to represent absolutely everybody in the community. And you think about it, I'm now part of the 90% of the people in our community that I am a part of. So I am one of you. You are one of me. That's who you will get when I go to the Senate. So we can get into platforms, but that's just a brief history of me. I've had some very high profile missions and opportunities where I briefed President Obama 3 times before I went and flew the mission for bin Laden. And I really got the sensation of how powerful that position is, regardless of who's in it. That is our commander in chief. You know, I've had the honor of meeting commander in chiefs, 4 of them in a row. And what great position, and what responsibility to make decisions like that. So that decision was made for us to go after bin Laden was down to one individual, and it was down to the president, the commander in chief, to make that decision. So it's not an easy job, and I'll just leave it at that. But they glad to be here and ready to answer questions, and get to know more who I am. And I wish we had more opponents on here that kind of get an indication of, contrast of who is who. But I did see my opponent just about 30 minutes ago, and so I really wish he was on here. So he's out running around town. So I wish he would just dial in. This is the 10th time that something has been set up for us to debate, and we still have not debated, not once. But, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll keep driving on.
Well, keep your mic muted for a second. Are there any other candidates on here that have joined in since we've begun? Any other candidates for the state legislator, federal legislator, school board? Okay, if not, then we're going to go ahead and get started with our questions. Even though there's still just the 2 of you on here, I'm still going to require just 1 minute of talking. I'm going to set a timer for myself here. So prayerfully you can't hear, but if you do, then you know that that's your time. Just 1 minute to answer the question. If you go over a few minutes, it's okay. It's not, but just don't go over 5 minutes of the time. Yes. So Miss Martha and Mr. England, if you could both unmute your microphones. Everyone else, please mute your microphone. And Mr. England, I'm going to ask you the first question.
Okay.
Just based on the state of our country right now, everything that's going on, there's quite a few issues and some things that have been put on the back burner since everything else has started to happen since COVID-19 and the demise of George Floyd. So what are your top priorities for improving race relations between law enforcement and minorities?
Mind if I go first on that one?
Pardon me? Yes, sir. Yes, that's
Okay. I think this first step is communication. I feel like I'm fully qualified to take this on to say that I have served with men and women that are not even from the United States. One of my best friends that I owe my life to was born and raised in Trinidad and was not even a U.S. citizen when he was defending our aircraft. I think when you get in those situations, you understand that people are people. And one thing that I will never claim is that how I was raised is the same as how somebody else was raised. So I think the communication. So as us speaking today, I will not claim that I try to understand how people in different parts of the nation were raised, which means there are realities that do happen. I know that racism is out there, and is it realistic to say it's 100% going to go away? That's a hard thing because of our past over the last 100 years. But we've got to keep reminding ourselves that we have to consciously and we have to work at it. That if I was your state senator, I would be communicating with everybody and without fear, because I need to know what it feels like to be threatened. The example I have is I have some very good friends across the street that are of different color than I am. They are fearful that when their son, same age as my daughter, 19 years old, gets pulled over, their reality is that they're concerned about that. They're worried. That's the reality. If my daughter gets pulled over because of the color I am, it's a different concern. It really is. And if that is obvious, then we have a problem. The problem is there, and I will absolutely concur that there is a problem. And it's going to be for a while, but we can't ignore it, and we can't wish it away and ignore it. We have to keep after it.
So what would be your priority in improving the relationship between law enforcement and minorities? How would you implement that where there would be more communication?
Well, one is training, and I think what it is, it's actually, there's events. So what we would do is training. In fact, the number one priority several years ago, this example that I would use, is that you have to make it a priority. It has to be mandatory, and it has to be no tolerance. And so we have to make it intolerable that if there is a sense of racial bias, that it's done. We have 100% control of our police, our emergency service, anything that has to do with providing a service to our community, that it has to be intolerable. So if there's a sense of it, that we have to get out of it. We can't have internal reviews internally reviewing themselves. I would love to be a part of the review process to look at and make sure that there is. And when I say I'm fully qualified, I'm all about the mission first. And if they're providing a service, if the police are providing a service and this is in the way, then I would absolutely advocate getting after it. And when I'm talking about the person, not every person comes from the same background. So there may be those that have racial bias when they were growing up, but you can work through that. You can train people to know that bias is uncalled for.
Okay.
So training is a big one.
Thank you very much. Ms. Martha?
Yes.
Although this question is a Senate question, I'm going to turn it into a school board question because there are RSOs inside of the school system, correct?
Yes, and I'm ready.
Yes, ma'am. So what would be your top priority, improving the relationship between minorities in the school system and the law enforcement and RSOs that travel from school to school?
Okay, well, before I get into the RSO law enforcement piece, I just want to say that I think education is the great equalizer. And I think Doug is onto something when he talks about training and he talks about communication. You know, what the school system has done in recent times here in the last couple of years, and I'm happy to say that I was kind of pushing for it, is worked on soft skills and social skills. And I think, you know, my father had it right when he said, you know, whatever you learn in kindergarten, that's what you got. And we have got to work on kindness. It's more important that people treat each other well than it is that they're smart. You know, I don't really care if you know about physics, but I care if you're going to be kind to each other and treat each other with respect. So I think that, like Doug said, you can educate people and train people to understand what that looks like. So I remember one thing when I first got on the school board and I looked at the code of conduct and I thought, what does this mean? It's a bunch of words. You're saying that you want the children to be respectful, but you're never teaching them what that is, what that looks like. And as far as the SROs and the police and that kind of thing, I think they need to be trained as well. You know, they have got to treat everybody. I mean, we're supposed to be innocent before proven guilty. And I'll tell you what, I got profiled recently. You're not going to believe it. I have this really nasty old purple truck that's like, you know, it's a farm truck, you know, it's rusty and stuff. And I was driving, and the cop pulled me over and I could just tell he thought I was drunk. And when he came up, I was like, dang, he has just profiled me by looking at this truck. So it was a very interesting experience for me. But I think, I really think education is the answer. People have to be educated. And the only way, in my opinion, as an educator, to get there is to teach them. You know, nobody comes out of the womb being rude, being mean, being unkind, and profiling people. You know, they don't come out that way. They learn that somehow. And if we don't break the cycle educationally, I'm not really sure how else you could get it done.
Okay. Do you think that say, for instance, one of your students was pulled over the same way and they were African American or Latin American, that they would have been, do you think that they would agree with you that the profiling that you receive and the profiling that they would experience would be on the same level?
Of course not. I mean, of course not. I mean, it's obviously not, but I just thought that was quite interesting.
Okay. So I'm going to stay with you for this next question. COVID-19 is mounting a major threat to districts across the nation to return to educating students in the traditional manner.
Yes.
Would your role be in providing the 37,000 students a safe return to the classrooms in the fall?
Well, you know, luckily for us, Mr. House is already on it, and he has got he's got things in place. He's hired a virtual principal already. You know, the senior leadership team is already working on that. We're supporting him, and like I said before, my job is to support him and to ensure that he is addressing the issues at hand, and he is an excellent administrator, and I'm just honored to be able to support him and work with him. He's doing a great job, and he already has in place supports for not only the students, but the teachers and all the workers in Clarksville-Montgomery County.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Mr. England, this next question would be for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
What changes can the court system make to sentencing guidelines for law enforcement officers' improper use of deadly force on minorities or anyone to deter the intolerable behavior?
Okay, good question. And I actually have a good answer for you. I will tell you, I think from a behavioral science aspect, I think in behavior, if behavior was part of the criminal act. So if a law enforcement officer commits a crime that was out of the line of duty of being a police officer, you know, that's one, you know, determining if there's a crime. I think until we get through this, I think it goes in peaks and valleys of civil rights. I think it's, I think we're back at the peak again. We're getting there, but we are nowhere near where we need to be. And so I think it needs to be reminded that there's an accountability of behavior. And what Ms. Murtha was talking about, I absolutely agree. Hate is a learned trait. And hate is what's destroying this country right now. But if there was a criminal act involved from a police officer, that's one from a very objective point of view. So a very logical sense that if the laws were broken, then we go with that. Then the next, I would love to see the idea of a behavior investigation to see if it was ruled as a hate was involved. When I say hate, that covers all the gambits of whether it be racial, whether it be sexist, all the things that would create hate because of bias, whether it be racial bias, gender bias, all those things, and get after these things. The reason why I say those, that's what we did in the military. The military looked at these, and you very well know that every case was going to be investigated to make sure there was no bias and no hate involved. And they go from there. To me, that's how you change the culture of those that are upholding the law. It's a little bit more accountability, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you very much. For Ms. Murtha, the next question. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
So adequate funding of education has and will continue to be an issue when it comes to providing quality education to our children. Mm-hmm. How would you propose to reinforce the district's effort to meet this challenge?
Well, all of the funding comes from the legislature and, the county commission here in town. And again, we are blessed. Mr. House is an excellent communicator. He keeps the lines of communication open between himself and the county commission. And in addition, he has reached to the state level and to the federal level. And many of the school board members have done the same thing because surprisingly, many people probably would not realize how little control we have at our level. There's so many mandates from the state level, from the federal level that we are constantly trying to put in place that we don't have as much control as we'd like to think we have. And of course, if we don't do what they say, then we lose the little bit of funding that we get. So, but again, our district, we have an excellent person who does, she does grant kinds of things and we get money from there. I think we're doing all we can do, and Mr. House has contacted Walmart, like a couple of foundations, different foundations that are bringing money into the district. So, we're really working. I think the district is working hard on that, and I think we're lucky to have people at the central office level who know how to get that done. But that is definitely a challenge. I would like to think that the county commission, to be perfectly honest, could be more proactive in that regard. When they like, let's talk growth. I mean, we know the growth is coming. We should have schools before the growth and not growth before the schools.
Absolutely. So, Mr. England, I'm going to ask the same question to you because this is very relevant to the position you're applying for as well. Do you remember the question? Should I repeat it?
Please repeat it because I wrote down some answers based on that. But if I was paying attention correctly, you were asking how can we, about the growth and how can we do better as an institution?
It's more about adequate funding for education, how that we have adequate funding for the education, but how would you propose to reinforce the district's effort to meet the challenge?
Okay, so the BEP is so complicated at this point. Complicated for a good reason because it has to do with attendance and it has to do with scores. What I would like to see is an evaluation, and I'm talking internal, so it doesn't cost anything. And I know when you say you want to do an evaluation or you want to have a commission, all it does is cost, and you may or may not, you may just be told what you thought you would want to ask anyways. But I know end of course examinations, and I know that the federal requirements, we should have asked for a waiver right now, but our current Senate did not ask for a waiver, or the governor. So that way educators can go into this quarter delayed or not delayed. So that way they could educate without having to be stressed with giving the testing that the students have been subjected to. But I have my eye on, as a future senator, all those things that will degrade in our education budget in the BEP. The school vouchers was a big thing that came up. School vouchers are not a bad program, but they are very specific to certain areas and demographics, income and, areas. Shelby County and Davidson County would be good recipients of a school voucher program, but it was deemed unconstitutional. There are other ways to manage things like that, or ESAs, education savings accounts. So, but I want to make sure that our district, which would be my responsibility, is getting adequately funded through the BEP. And it needs to be a priority. It needs to be given to the district as required. Now, like Ms. Murtha said, our district here in Clarksville-Montgomery County School System is doing well, a lot better than a lot of other counties in Tennessee. They should be awarded based on metrics for that from a resourcing standpoint. There should be, a no lower than. What it does is, I don't want to penalize other counties that aren't doing as well, but there needs to be some sort of recognition and reward in these cases here, whether it be technology or textbooks or things like that for the school. Those are great ways to actually incentivize counties like ours, districts like ours that are doing well.
Okay.
So more into that. Having not been an educator, I will ask the right questions, but I do know how to budget, and I will always protect our teachers and our resources for our students. We need more resources for our teachers. The administrators don't need as much. The commissioner, I would love to have the commissioner keep it as a appointed position, but I would love to be that position, many other commissioner positions, to be subjected to a confirmation process.
I'm glad you said that the teachers are important to you, because I wanted to ask you a question about the teachers' pay. What would be how would you implement higher pay for teachers so that we can retain more quality educators?
Well, so we have a rainy day fund, focus less on having an emergency rainy day fund and actually come up with a 5-year plan to bring it up to where a profession that requires professionals that have a 4-year degree to actually have salary income commensurate to having a 4-year degree, right up straight out of college. We have 65 to 68,000 teachers in the public education system here in Tennessee. It's a big chunk. It's a big amount. But I don't think there's anybody that will argue that our teachers are truly our future for our children. They're the ones that are our counselors. They're with them. So a 5-year plan to trade off those programs that we look at, so, $1 billion surplus that we had, we could pat ourselves on the back that we had $1 billion of revenue surplus. Let's throw that into education. We know education is important, and it's important to me. I have 4 grown adults, which Ms. Murtha actually kept them in line years ago. And so I truly appreciate our educators out there. My kids would not be where they are today if it wasn't for teachers.
Thank you. So I'm just going to lead into the next question with you. Will you support legislation that prohibits a felon's voter rights from being taken away?
I'm all about second chances. Now, you've committed a felon. To me, it depends on which kind of felon. Now, if it's the point where it's a habitual act, then good category. Now, voter rights, to take away somebody's right to vote or to have an opinion towards something, I always think that somebody can be reformed. And we need to leave it up to our judicial system to actually determine that this individual and behavioral health to actually go through. I would love to look into the felon reform Now, if you get into capital punishment and, for example, murder, that may be a different story. But I believe if I didn't have second chances when I was a young private in the Army, I would not have made it to the most senior position in the Army, just for making silly mistakes. And if you make a silly mistake at a felon level, some of it could be to the point where they have been reformed or they have a different change of heart. Cultural character can be changed through training and education and examples, role models, mentors, all that down the road. So I believe there needs to be categories looked at for felons.
Why would there need to be categories looked at for felons when if they've already served their time and come out of prison, and they're doing their time with a probation officer or whatever have you? Why would they need to have to prove it again by not being able to vote?
That's actually a very good question. You stumped me on that. My first approach is to actually look at it and to see what reform really means. So let me take a step back to that. The first category are those that are at the top of capital. So I guess if they're capital, they're probably not coming out of prison. So I believe that there should be some reform in looking at those that are convicted felons, because not all convicted felons are reformed. And so if they're convicted of a crime and they state that the case officer says that they have been reformed, I'm open to the idea to look at those to get their rights back.
But whether they
did run in.
Or not, why can't they vote? Whether they've been reformed, if they're out of jail, if they're no longer in prison, why wouldn't they be able to vote? If they're in prison, regardless of whether somebody thought that they were reformed enough to let them out. If they recommit a crime, then yes, they go back into the prison system. But if they're out, free, even with a band on their, why wouldn't you say that this legislation needs to be changed where they can vote?
No, you're right. So if they serve their time, that's a different category. Because, if they are serving their time or they're on probation, that's a different category. So I'm open to the idea. In fact, I ran into a felon that was out in Stewart County, and he would love to get in their vote. He has served his time, and there is no wait period. And so he and I spoke for quite a while, and his was a nonviolent felony, and he doesn't understand why he can't vote. And it really sparked my interest to look down that path too. So I don't have a defined answer for you, but it did spark my interest to look at the idea that those have served their time to vote. Absolutely.
Whether it was a violent crime or a nonviolent crime, why wouldn't their voting rights be reinstated? So that's just, I'll give you a chance to marinate on that. So the next forum. So Miss England, Miss Martha, the next question is for you. Can you hear me okay?
I can, ma'am.
So this question is, as a school board member, would you advocate for instituting a Black History module into the CMCSS curriculum? And if you would, please explain, kind of give a little clarity on how you would do that, because our African-American and Brown students and Asian, they're stuck to a small curriculum, and the rest of the curriculum that they receive is white American history. Mm-hmm. So how would you implement?
Right. Well, that's an interesting question. And the thing is that the way the school board is designed, so when I push for social emotional skills, then I speak to the superintendent and I let them know that I have a concern. So that's something that we could talk to the superintendent about. But when it comes to curriculum, I have no power. And as a matter of fact, the curriculum comes from the state. So the state education department, they're the ones that set out the curriculum, send it out to the districts, and the districts implement that. So that kind of thing, to be perfectly honest, my understanding would be we would have to go more to the state level, to the Department of Education level, and that's where we would have to go for something like that. I have zero power to implement that, and And therefore, I'm just going to be honest and say it's something that I can bring to the superintendent. It's something that the school board as a whole can advocate for at the state level. But in terms of my having any kind of ability to actually make that happen, I have no ability to make that happen. So,
so if this is something that we know that is happening,
mm-hmm.
why wouldn't it have been brought to the table? If we know that it's already happening, if we know that it's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
How is it that it's gone on so long?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I knew the answer to that. I mean, again, the curriculum and the testing go hand in hand, and that stuff is sent down from the tippity top. So the only thing I can say is that it sounds like it's high time that the school board as a whole brings that to the table and asks the superintendent how, in fact, we can make inroads into something like that. Even the social emotional piece is not fully implemented at this point. It's just, they've just begun it. And I mean, I brought that to the table 4 years ago. So, why is that not in place? That's a great question. And I'll tell you, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to having power. But I'm more than happy to address it. I wish I could act like, okay, no problem. I'll just go take care of that. But I know fully well that I have very little say so about it. I don't even know what to say about it, because I know that I can't affect the change that you and I would like to see. Even curriculum wise, just to take it to another level, I don't agree with the curriculum at the high school. I mean, I think those kids are mandated to take stuff that how many times are we going to teach what a noun and a verb is? Let's move on. Those kids are bored with that stuff and they want to learn something different. We need to help them find their passion. Children that leave high school should be able to get a job, not come out with a high school diploma that says, well, now let me see, am I going to go to college? How much is that going to cost me? And I don't have any kind of skill set, for a job. So that opens a big can of worms. I'd like to see us teach things that really citizens can actually put to work the minute they step out the door, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, I know that's probably not the best answer. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. So you've been on the school board for 4 years now.
I've been on the school board for 8 years.
8 years now. And are there racial disparities in the school disciplinary action, for school disciplinary action?
Absolutely. Absolutely there are. Absolutely. And there are disparities in the way that we treat children, even between male and female, there's disparities. Schools need to understand that boys want to move. This sitting still all day long, it's not good for I'm the physical education teacher, okay? I want them to get busy. And you can learn a lot by moving. You can learn a lot by manipulating things and playing. And, we still have, unfortunately, that factory level school setting, and we know it's not working. But again, you ask questions, you try to make changes, but the biggest thing I have learned since I've been on the school board is what little power the local school system has. We are at the whim of the state and federal level. They tell us what to do, they tell us how to do it, and they tell us when to bake the cake. And I feel bad for teachers. It's getting worse instead of better, in my opinion. I've taught every grade there is. And right now I'm teaching online to high school students. Back in the day, we did like arts and craft, hands-on thing every day. They don't have time for that anymore. They're told what to do, how to teach it, what time of day to teach it. All the second grade teachers are teaching the same thing every day. It's unfortunate. And we know people are different. We know that nobody is the same, and yet we treat them the same, and we think they're all going to learn the same way somehow. But again, I'm telling you, that stuff comes from the top. We teachers are doing the best we can from the constraints we have around us, and they are pretty serious constraints.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mr. England, these are going to be our last two questions.
Okay.
England, Tennessee state and the federal representative have a fiduciary responsibility of ensuring that all residents of Tennessee are safe, healthy, and provided a reasonable place of employment and housing according to the Constitution. In this position, how would you propose to meet these minimal objectives? Because we have so many people that, not just within this COVID-19, that are having problems with housing, having problems with employment. So what would be your stance on that, and how would you try to change that?
You're talking about provided housing?
Not just housing, but just in general, the safety, the health, and reasonable place of employment, reasonable housing. And if you made this position, how would you propose to meet those minimum objectives?
Well, you know that my platform is, I'm all about free capital. I'd like to see more jobs out there. I do know from a cultural standpoint that it is, if we make it too easy, then we won't grow out of it. I'd like to see, now there are those that have run into some sort of hardship, unforecasted hardship, that we need to have those programs in place, which we do, but it's based on if there is more of a need than there is for housing and type of health services that are out there. And I think that's what you're getting at. You're looking at health services, things that are provided for those that are unable to provide. It's a very delicate balance. And I know we have to get the budget right when it comes to that. But I would rather have the ability to provide, or have the community provide, adequate jobs for people to get out on their own in a transition. I am more for transition programs versus sustainment programs, and that's just my background. You work hard for it, and not everybody has the same opportunity. I do know that not everybody has the same opportunity. Okay. The same opportunity that everybody else has. So that's where those programs are there for a transition. And when I say transition, sometimes they're time limited.
Okay.
But that's where I would start to focus, just from a philosophical standpoint or fundamental standpoint.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Murtha, this would be the last question. Rigor and relevance are two ingredients needed to challenge the minds of our youth. As a school board member, what do you consider your role in attaining this requirement, or what have you done to attain the requirement?
Well, again, the school board hires and supports the superintendent, and we have what's called policy monitoring. So Mr. House is responsible for putting the policies in place, and it's our job to ensure that he is, in fact, putting those policies in place. And those policies address things like rigor. And so it's our job, like I said, to ensure that he is doing the things that are necessary to make sure that the schools as a whole, all the schools and the teachers and the curriculum and such, have those things in place. And so as a school board member, I support him, and I make sure that those things are happening, and that's our job. So we don't get to go into the schools and tell the teachers what to do, or tell the principals what to do, or question, how they're doing it. We hire the CEO, and then we let him do his job, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much for showing up tonight. And I apologize that your running mate probably did show up on this evening. And those that run far and fast from these political forums, forgive them, as this was their opportunity to state their platform as well. So we appreciate you very, very much for taking this time on a Friday night to join us. And from this point, I'm going to hand it over to our president, Jimmy Carlin.
I appreciate the question, and if you don't mind, I will not be afraid of a difficult question.
Yes.
And sometimes getting it right the first time may be a rookie mistake. I do want to kind of readdress the convicted felons that they don't have the restored voting rights. Voting is a right, but in our society, it is now become a privilege. Like driving is a privilege. It's not a right, but voting was given to us by God. Everybody should have the right to vote, to say what they're doing, but it's become a privilege. That is a very hard battle to say what is reformed to restore those privileges. Having grown up in a very closed loop environment in the military, that it's easy to put tangible things on where those rights are restored or those privileges are restored. So I am going to research more into that. I do know that it's a very fine line from a behavior standpoint, what is considered reform, whether it's time served or it's a case officer that says this person has the tendency to commit a crime again. That's where that slippery slope is. So I don't have a defined answer for you, but I do know that I need to research more on that.
Thank you very much for saying that. Thank you.
Okay.
Jimmy?
On behalf of the Clarksville branch of NAACP, we definitely appreciate you for taking the time to come out. Both of you did an excellent job, a yeoman's job. The bottom line is, in order for your community to understand you better, you got to be able to articulate what it is that your plans are once you get into office, or if you decide, if you're allowed to stay in office. Again, as our moderator said, we thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we pray that next time that it'll be better, but this is our first forum on Zoom, and we hope to improve upon it as we go forward. So thank you so much. We are always available if you have questions. What are the things NAACP will do? Ms. England, if you get to see, and we will see you every year. We will sit down and talk to you about some things that we think are important, and you might not think they're important. But the bottom line is they are important to us and the people that we represent. And we represent all people. It's not just black people. It's not just white people, brown or red. We represent all people. That's why the 5 letters, NAACP, is the National Social Advancement of Colored People. And people come in all colors. So I want you to understand that. So you don't have to agree with us, but we still have to work with you. We have to make you understand what is important to us. Again, thank you for coming out tonight. This forum is coming to a close, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much for having me. And I just want to say, Jimmy, that I'm glad you took a moment to talk about that. And that is the problem in general. People don't want to listen to each other's ideas, and they don't want to compromise, right? So if we would all just take a minute to work together, we wouldn't have these problems. But it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you guys taking the time with me tonight. I know I'm tripping all over my words, but I apologize.
You're doing great. Ms. England, you have any final words?
Mr. Garland, no, I appreciate it. No, it's respect. 7 years of combat has taught me the idea that you respect everyone, because a person is a person. We're all God's children. And I have been affirmed over and over and over that respect and love for one another is the key to everything. And so if I can't show respect to anyone to listen to them, then I should not be in office.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Audio Jungle.